So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. Now, in today's episode, a real pleasure, I'm joined by Barbara Mazur. Now, Barbara has really been at the cutting edge of all things innovation, science, and technology across agricultural biotech, over about the last 40 years. Now, following a decorated career and a subsequent retirement from Corteva in 2019, Barbara's advising venture firms and startups across the space. And I recently bumped into Barbara in the World Ag Tech in San Francisco and managed to convince her to come on the show. So Barbara, I know you're a very busy lady, so thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Simon. I'm delighted to be here.
That's great. And Barbara, I think you spent nearly 40 odd years in your professional career all across, following a Ph.D. in molecular genetics and, a whole career in Ag Biotech. Why?
Because I love it.
What is it you love about it?
So when I got my PhD, it was in molecular genetics, and there was no agricultural biotech, plant biotech. And actually, when Dupont hired my husband and I, it was because they decided to start a program in biotechnology. No idea what shape that would take. Their words were, come, figure it out, hire some good people. And after those first few years, there were breakthroughs in our ability to work with plants, and we took it from there, and there were always exciting projects to do, and I've never wanted to leave the field.
Amazing. So hold on, you went as a joint team with your husband. What did your husband do?
He's a polymer chemist and fit in very nicely into the Dupont programs. They actually knew him before they knew me. We had commuted. He was on the faculty at the University of Chicago. I was in graduate school at Rockefeller University. And the concept, the reality of two jobs in one city was thrilling. And so that was a governing fact of our lives ever after. We were the second couple that Dupont had ever hired, but there were many that followed.
Oh, were there? Right.
And two people, one location.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I get that. But I suppose when you were doing your PhD, right, and you went on to be you're a research kind of after the PhD. You did a stint as an intern somewhere, right, or a researcher? Is that right?
Well, I was a postdoctoral fellowship. I got an NSF fellowship, and then the Department of Biophysics and Theoretical Biology, big name at the University of Chicago, offered me a research assistant professor position, which I took. But I was only in that for a year when Dupont came along and talked us into leaving.
Got it. So being an academic, that wasn't going to be your chosen path.
It was pretty shocking to people around me. You're going to industry. Nobody did that then. It was, you only did that if you didn't have opportunities in academia. And I was viewing it as a positive opportunity to shape the future and my future. So, and that changed during the course of my career with lots of startups, lots of people going into industry, large and small companies. And I was glad I made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just on the point about shaping the future, what was it at that time, probably around the time you joined, what was it about kind of biotech and the application in agriculture that attracted you and appealed to you?
There was nothing, actually.
Wow.
But I had the sense that there could be something. So let me back up a little. When I was in high school, well, you wanted to talk about forces that shaped me, and maybe this is a good place to segue
Great.
into that.
Absolutely.
So my father, genius, chemist, polymer chemist who developed new polymers for satellites. He wanted me to go into science, and, you know, teenagers don't follow their parents' suggestions. Science teachers in high school were not good, and I loved history. And I was fortunate in that I was selected for a program where I went to high school in the morning and UCLA in the afternoon my senior year. So I took history and humanities because that was my intention. And during that year, I went, whoa, maybe this isn't really what I want to do, being consumed, reading books and having, you know, looking backwards rather than forwards. So when it came time to actually go full-time to the university, I selected science. And I majored in microbiology and did all one quarter for a chemistry degree as well. Doing all those chemistry courses turned out to be fortuitous because that's how I met my husband. He was a graduate student there. And so where I grew up, no females worked. They all stayed home, raised children, volunteered, and I just sort of assumed that would be my path as well. And my husband said, Barbara, you're ambitious, competitive. I think you should go to graduate school. And I said, you're right. His parents were both professors, mathematics and chemistry. And so he came from that background. And I applied to graduate school in molecular biology, which I love the logic and the way that it uncovered new truths. And the chairman of the department said, well, we know you're just going to follow your husband after he graduates, and we're not going to get any credit for having supported you, so we're not going to support you. And I said, that's okay. I'm going to enroll anyway, and I'll just pay myself. And so that was a spring quarter. And after that quarter, he called me in and said, we found money for you for next year. Because I'd been at the top of the class, and it was rather embarrassing that their woman was not being supported. True to his words, we left after that year. And that's when I went to the Rockefeller University, and it was really a seminal experience. It was wonderful for me in that it was a very caring environment, cross-fertilization environment. It didn't matter what field you were in. That's how the whole university operated. 20 students a year across everything from math to biology. And they really took care of us, nurtured us. And I left with the attitude that if I succeeded there, I can succeed anywhere, and I don't have to be afraid of others. And I know for myself, as well as many other women, self-confidence is a key attribute that we all need and aren't necessarily carrying. The men seem to be self-confident from birth. The women have to learn that. And so that was really good for me. And so when I went to Dupont, there weren't other women. There were a lot of deep male voices, but hey, I can handle this. So that was a segue, but I think one that was important. I did note that I'd go to research conferences, and the number of women at my age, of my age group, whatever that was, declined over time. There were always young women, older women, but the oldest grouping disappeared. They dropped out at too high a rate, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still paying the price for that now. When you look at the when you look at the industry and you look at the levels of female talent, as it were, and female leadership, and it's always the challenge with getting that growth from the bench, from the scientists through to the leadership, through to the management of teams, through, that's where I think the gap is in the marketplace. Whenever I have CTO positions, that's the area and the challenge where I don't see so much female talent. And, when I have my mandates and I'm asked for gender diverse profiles at that level, it's literally less than 5%.
Yeah.
And you actually have to now put females forward that aren't actually at that level. There's a real gap between their male counterparts and where they are. And if you want to hire a woman, you have to develop them as part of the journey. But it couldn't have been easy for you taking that journey, right? And becoming the leader, as it were, because you played a really significant senior position at Dupont, right? So they must have really seen that early with you.
So after this initial figure out something to do, figure out something, hire some good people, we were in the central research department, and we became aware that the agricultural products department had developed a whole new class of herbicides. They didn't know how they worked. And so we self-assembled into a group, microbiology, yeast genetics, plant molecular biology, plant tissue culture, and we solved the problem. And then they came and said, "We think you should lead this group." And I said, sorry, my watch was on water.
No worries.
So
they said you should lead the group.
Right. And that, Simon, was the hardest decision of my career. I'd been raised in fine academic environments. I enjoyed the science. I was recognized for the science. I was giving talks globally and really enjoying that. And I was worried that I would disappear if I accepted a management job. And so there was that concern. The other concern was, Barbara, if you don't take this job, we'll put so-and-so in the job and you'll report to him. And that was an even worse thought. And so I ended up accepting the job, but I didn't perform the job in the way it was typically done at Dupont, which is you become a manager and you put the science behind you and go forward.
Yes,
I
yeah.
kept the science as an integral part of what I cared about. And I ended up really enjoying my position because I could follow multiple projects simultaneously, and there were always challenges and opportunities to comment and opportunities to speak and write about what the whole group was doing. And so I was happy with my decision to go ahead and be a manager on my own terms.
Yeah, sounds like it was a great decision. Tell me, when you reflect back at your time, what was the best time for you when you think about, what did you enjoy the most? What kind of role and position gave you the most satisfaction when you reflect?
So the way we formed Ag Biotech at Dupont, my boss at the time said, Ag Products wants to have a biotech group. We're going to pick 20 people. They're going to be the best scientists, but also the most entrepreneurial. The academically oriented scientists can stay in the central research department. And we grew that 20 people tenfold over the course of time. And we'd originally worked on crop protection, but they brought in a business group that said, no, we want you to alter the composition of grains. And we all went, what? That's never been done before. We don't know how to do that, but we did it. We figured out how to do it. We were a close-knit group, and ideas flowed back and forth, and we changed the oil profiles of soybean. We made it healthier. We had all kinds of exciting projects on protein composition, oil composition, carbohydrates, removing anti-nutritionals, projects that are still very relevant today. And that was exciting. The frustrations were we used GM technology, and that kept us from getting products into the market at the speed we would have wanted. So the early discovery was very exciting, and we were actually, so what happened is the business found us foundation seed companies to work with to move our traits into elite germplasm. And then Monsanto came along and bought both our seed company partners for more money than Dupont could ever imagine spending on those. But we spent a lot of time educating the new CEO on what we could do with Ag Biotech. And to our surprise and delight, he bought Pioneer Hybrid Seeds, and we had a new partner. And we could bring our traits to them. We didn't quite realize the ramifications of that purchase, although Dupont bought Pioneer. Pioneer was the profit center, and they called the shots, and we had to get used to that. And they weren't as excited about grain quality traits as we had been. They pivoted us back to crop protection traits.
Okay.
So we had a new era focused on rootworm traits and insect protection, disease protection. I think what I liked is it was always learning something new.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And we got products into the market. We were successful. But I should say that Pioneer was a very different culture from Dupont. When you were commenting earlier about having to develop women, Dupont made that decision very early in my career. And they went out of the way to send promising women, shall we say, to development courses, give them opportunities, and were very proactive in developing us. Pioneer didn't have that tradition. In fact, there was much more of a breeding old boys network attitude to it. And so we had to get used to that, change that where we could. And so there were new adventures in both the science and the culture of the company.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine, ag is one of those industries, when you think about it, it's traditionally a very male-orientated, the farmers, right? I mean, male-orientated environment. Yeah. And I can imagine those cultural challenges. How long did that take to mesh and to kind of work through? Because, you worked, post merger, you worked there you continue working there for a number of years, right? And right. How long did that take really to work?
At least 5 years.
Wow, okay.
And I think a pivotal moment was when I recommended that we acquire Verdea, a plant startup. And the people that came in with that startup helped bring more of our entrepreneurial, science-oriented culture to the company. We were still biotech versus breeding, but we had respected leaders, and in particular, John Bedbrook agreed to take over leadership of the biotech group, and the strength of his leadership and creativity and intellectual knowledge really helped change the R&D division of Pioneer. Mm. And so we had a start. They helped bring it along.
Yeah, no, great. That sounds like that was really integral. And tell me, because I think in your last 5 years or so, when you were doing the technology role, right, you were really involved with investing in the ecosystem. Finding technologies out there, partnering with companies. I know you did some really interesting stuff. That must have been really exciting, because no doubt roughly around sometime there would have been this ecosystem of startups evolving. I mean, look at my job, like finding talent for startups, and like, my whole job is dedicated to this space, right? I mean, can you believe that, right? So at what point?
And we wish you success, Simon.
At what point did all these firms spout up, and where was this ecosystem all of a sudden growing and developing?
So I should add another really exciting part of my career.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess it was around 2013, maybe, right after CRISPR was discovered. And I said to several people on the team, we need to get that intellectual property secured and get FTO. And so we went very quickly and talked. The University of Vilnius University had key IP, University of California. We created an exchange so that everybody could have parts of that intellectual property. And we secured what we needed. We started working with Vilnius University. And in going there, I realized that the lab there that had discovered much of what became CRISPR had wonderful postdocs with nowhere to go because they were in Vilnius and not all of them had English fluency, and at the same time realized a strong need for other types of enzymes, nucleases that could improve editing so that you weren't editing kind of in the region, but specifically the bases you wanted. And so we formed a joint venture, a startup with Vilnius University, New England Biolabs, to discover new nucleases and market them. And at the same time, we had a collaboration with Caribou, which was a startup out of University of California, Berkeley. And then my boss was Neil Gutterson at that time, had a strong view that we needed to bring editing to the public differently than had been done with GM traits so that there was greater public acceptance. And this took many different forms, meetings, dialogues, discussions. In my case, I was in Japan and I became aware of a trait that was being sold, tomatoes with high GABA. And I said, wait, we could edit that and make it an even better trait. And the Japanese were buying it because it lowered blood pressure in various trials. So let's start a company to have edited tomatoes. And one of my Japanese colleagues at Dupont said, you've got to talk to Takashita-san. He would be great. And I met Takashita-san and I said, we need to start this company together. And he was enthusiastic, loved the idea. And we started working together. And we formed a company, Sanitech Seeds. We formed the CTO from Scuba University. We financed the greenhouse. We talked to the Japanese granting agencies who'd been putting money into plant biotech ever since the rice genome days. We're thrilled at the idea of an outcome, a commercial product to show the benefits of their investments. I spoke with the chief regulator in Japan and spent over an hour, which was an unprecedented amount of time, explaining gene editing to her and why she should embrace it. And all of that came together. We had an outcome of Sanitech Seeds, healthy biotech seeds, and they're selling tomatoes today with edited, improved health profile tomatoes with ideas about other products that they could go for. So having that footprint in Japan was very important for the global acceptance of edited traits. I got a lot of good sushi on my trips talking to all these people. So personally, it was enjoyable.
Amazing, amazing. So it sounds like really there was a lot of this entrepreneurialism. I mean, you outlined different applications, different companies, joint ventures. Did it all really come together post this 2012 arena?
Yeah, because that's when I started, I guess first I was looking for startups that could help Pioneer fill its pipeline because they had technology or traits. And then that became, how do we afford this? Can we have creative business solutions? And we've got elite germplasm. That's what they need to prove the validity of their traits. You know, public germplasm might be a good start, but they don't know that the breeders hadn't already solved their problems. So we had what they needed, they had what we needed. We started coming up with creative solutions to both sides of the problem, and that sort of moved into what I'm doing today, I guess.
Yeah. Tell me, is traits more exciting than crop protection? Or sorry, traits and seeds more exciting than, I suppose, crop protection products?
No, I think both are equally important. As you've clearly seen, we're moving into new types of crop protection, biologicals, pheromones. We have many of the same types of problems. So how do you show that a biological works in multiple environments? Again, field trials, multi-location, multi-year field trials, just like for seed traits. So again, the replication, the new types of products, I think there's a lot coming together, and crop protection will always be a firm need. You had asked me earlier about needs formulations. All the companies that start in some kind of biological control run into the same problems that the chemists had. How do we formulate this molecule or this microbe so that it's taken up by the plant, that it has longevity, but also degraded. It can be degraded. It's protected from UV, from temperature. There's so many formulation challenges that are showing up that been there, done that. So coming from a world of chemistry.
Yeah. And I suppose when you think about the future and you think about the technology that we have now, what excites you about that? What excites you about, what potential, what can we achieve with all this wonderful technology and science? How can we apply it, to best effect?
So I think all of it can lead to healthier food, whether you're altering the composition of grains to make them healthier, or altering the crop protection products that you use to grow vegetables, row crops. Having healthier alternatives is important. So I'm excited about where biologicals can take us, but having a healthy respect for it's not a slam dunk. I'm excited about bringing biodiversity solutions into our lineup. There are solutions that have evolved across the whole globe, and being able to identify those and use those in new settings is important. That was one of our early successes. We found stalk rot resistance in South American germplasm, where the assaults on the germplasm from disease were continual and constant, we could move that into North American germplasm. And I'm also excited about the role that genomics has and will continue to play in facilitating breeding, because we know what we're doing and we have markers we can track. And I'm excited about the world of startups because I've seen great projects that weren't supported in big ag because they had other priorities, but they get started, supported by venture money, and they flourish and are successful. And then they can go back and sell them back to big ag. So I think the world of startups, which didn't used to exist, is a wonderful change for ag everywhere.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even now, so different from big corporate. You know, the challenge is you can't almost, they need to be run separately, don't they? You know, they can't be integrated in, and you know, otherwise they just become the corporate. So you know, it's great to see so many companies doing some really exciting things. It seems to me, I just wanted your view on this, with the CRISPR and some of the gene editing technologies. Am I right in thinking, I'm reading a bit more about this now, maybe it's more US than Europe, but these edits are now recognized as a non-GMO, right? And this seems to be a trend. Is that the way you foresee it?
Yes, and the UK is going that direction. The EU had a Supreme Court decision that I think set them back. But I have a good friend in Italy who said that the farmers groups are really lobbying for acceptance of edits. They can see what a difference it could make in their work. And so he believes that the EU is going to go that way in time. Shorter rather than the longer time we believed in the past. So I'm optimistic about gene edits, and I think it removes much of the baggage that we had to deal with over past years, which I think was largely, in large part, political. And even getting our GM products out, big ag would not commercialize unless it was approved in Asia, approved in Europe, and those approvals came very slowly, again, driven by politics. Once China and Syngenta were together, Syngenta's applications moved faster through the Chinese framework.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. It's that doesn't surprise me. Heavily political. And tell me though, I've got a question for you. If you have one wish for the industry, right? One wish, or you could change either one wish or you could change one thing, what would it be?
Doesn't matter how you make the product, you can commercialize it.
Right, okay.
I think I have many other wishes, but they're happening, like life science or pharma technology is moving into ag. So we're a little behind, but we're taking advantage of discoveries across disciplines. So many of those are being granted. The political ones are much harder to grant.
Yeah, understand. And do you think, in terms of how you see the industry over the next 10 years or so, is it still an area which will venture capital investment will still come to it? Do you feel that we can really continue investing in some of this science and technology and look to commercialize and make real change?
We, of course, need positive examples to keep the investments coming. But I think those are happening and will continue to happen. And Big Ag and various settings has said, we need startups. We can't do it all ourselves. We have a different role to play. And so they're investing in the world of startups as well. So strategic as well as financial investors. So I'm hopeful. I know that there's challenges right now in the financial sector, but I'm hopeful we'll get beyond them.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I share your hope as well. And Barbara, it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your experience and wise, sage wisdom.
Thank you, Simon. As I told you at the beginning, I said to myself, how did I not know about Simon's podcasts? They're wonderful. I'm learning so much from them.